Hello and welcome to happilyeducated.com. Today I am talking to you from my parents' house, which as you can probably tell is a whole lot nicer than our house. And yet again, today's post was supposed to be about self-determination theory, but yet again, I am copping out. For whatever reason, I'm just finding it really difficult to describe that theory or explain it in concise and understandable terms. So rather than post something that makes no sense at all, I decided to use this opportunity to address a comment that a reader left on the blog that just stimulated some thoughts. So in response to my ignorance is bliss post, a reader wrote, quote, "Armed with too much information, people often become unable to trust their instincts and go with their gut/listen to their hearts. I argued that my gut and heart are best able to guide me when they've already internalized quality information. I also suggested that the way to avoid information overload is to consume a balanced diet of information. And the thing is that until that moment, when I wrote that, I had never before considered what a balanced diet of information is or whether I consume one. So this is something I've been giving some thought to. And when I Googled the term balanced diet of information, absolutely nothing turned up. So this post is my attempt to sort of construct a definition. So with the internet at our fingertips, we just have a ridiculous amount of information available to us in any given moment. And the thing is, though, that, in many ways, it would be nice to always know everything, but as humans, we are somewhat limited in terms of how much information we can process. And furthermore, the quality of information that is available to us is mixed, and its usefulness is often questionable as well. So, in my humble opinion, this suggests that we should be very selective about what information we consume so that we, 1, don't overwhelm ourselves, and 2, don't waste our processing capacity on garbage. Now, it's important to me to stay well-informed, but I recognize that having too much information isn't necessarily good for me. When I really try to keep up to date with political news coverage, for example, I find that there are 2 main consequences of that. The first being that I spend way too much time reading or watching the news. And the second, that I end up feeling angry and frustrated and helpless regarding the dysfunction of our political system. And similarly, when I'm really trying to keep up to date with world news coverage with its emphasis on war and famine and poverty and natural disasters, I'm usually just left feeling completely depressed. So how can I stay informed, or in other words, avoid ignorance, while still, while not letting the task take over my life or just demolish my personal happiness? And I think the answer lies in this idea of consuming a balanced diet of information. So I put together a little definition for you, and I'm just going to read it straight up because I spent a lot of time writing it, and I want to make sure that I get it right. So, a balanced diet of information would contain relatively equal parts of local, national, and international news coverage. It would represent liberal and conservative viewpoints, as well as middle-of-the-road, compromise-based perspectives. Its content would both depress and uplift, citing examples of tragedy and goodness in fairly even measure. It would include information about others and information about myself. Feedback on my own performance in the world would address both things I do well and areas that need improvement. A balanced diet of information would include information I want and know I need, as well as information I might not want but still need. It would contain both information that is easy to consume and information that forces my brain to stretch a bit. Finally, it would be topped off with some quality entertainment, perhaps the fictional story type, because there's a lot to be learned from imagining how the world could be. So you can let me know what you think of that definition and where I've missed things and anything you disagree with. But do I personally consume a balanced diet of information? No, not even close. I'm really bad about keeping up with local news, even though it's probably the most important kind of all. And my exposure to conservative news coverage is limited to when Jon Stewart makes fun of it on The Daily Show. And as I mentioned in the past, I'm also not so good about seeking out feedback about my own performance, especially when I think that feedback might not be positive. But I do have an excuse, and that excuse is that until just a few weeks ago, I had never considered this idea that, a balanced diet of information is desirable. And now that I, sort of have the idea in my head and I've thought a bit about what that would actually mean, I think I'm going to go for it. So I've decided to start with adding a little bit of local news coverage, a daily dose of that to my diet of information. And so just this morning, I scanned the headlines and read a few articles in the online edition of our local newspaper, and it was really quite enjoyable. I think it's going to be a nice addition to my daily routine. Now, as far as finding a source of information about conservative news and viewpoints, I'd really like some recommendations on that, actually. I'd like to find a source that fairly and accurately represents conservative views without all the histrionics and righteous indignation. So in other words, Rush Limbaugh and Fox News are totally out of the running as far as I'm concerned. But, in general, I also prefer to read the news rather than watch the news. So if you've got some ideas on something I should check out, please let me know. And that's all for today, really. I hope that this blog is somehow fitting into your balanced diet of information. And until next time, happy learning.